18 dishes? You're the only one who can make them just right, Mom. My son David's voice carried that persuasive tone he'd mastered since childhood, the one that usually got him exactly what he wanted. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed, to my ear, mentally calculating the hours of preparation this would require for his upcoming dinner party. But it was the text that arrived 3 days later that truly cut deep. By the way, we've maxed out the seating. Maybe you could just drop off the food. Or eat in the kitchen. The Millers are coming and Vanessa wants to make a good impression. My wooden spoon paused mid-stir above the simmering pot of my grandmother's secret pozole recipe. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I was good enough to prepare 18 intricate dishes for my son and daughter-in-law's dinner party, but not good enough to sit at their table. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What David and Vanessa didn't realize was that the signature sauces served at Harvest Table, the upscale restaurant where they were constantly trying to secure reservations to impress their friends, came from my recipes. The same just a housewife they were now relegating to kitchen duty was actually the anonymous culinary creator behind the farm-to-table establishment that had food critics from 3 counties raving. The waiting list for a Saturday night reservation was 2 months long, and Chef Marcus regularly thanked his secret weapon in interviews, though he'd honored my request to keep my identity private. But I had never told my family about my culinary partnership with Harvest Table. Not my son David, not his status-obsessed wife Vanessa, and certainly not my teenage granddaughter Lily, who had recently started acting embarrassed by my modest home and simple wardrobe. Only my grandson Max, at 10 years old, seemed to still appreciate coming to Grandma Elena's for cooking lessons and stories. I never expected my middle years to involve navigating the complicated dance of family expectations and personal fulfillment. After Roberto passed away 8 years ago, I had dedicated myself to 2 things: my family and my cooking. The first brought me joy mingled with growing heartache. The second gave me purpose and, unexpectedly, a modest but comfortable income stream I'd kept to myself. My son David and his wife Vanessa had always been preoccupied with appearances. They lived in Westbridge Estates, the kind of neighborhood where landscapers came weekly and luxury SUVs with private school stickers lined circular driveways. Vanessa orchestrated elaborate dinner parties for David's colleagues and clients, always finding ways to mention their renovation featured in a regional home magazine or their vacation to the Amalfi Coast. In their world, I was an inconvenience, a reminder of humbler beginnings. My clothes weren't designer brands. My house in Oakdale was comfortable but modest, with a kitchen that prioritized function over fashion. And I preferred quiet evenings experimenting with new recipes to attending charity galas, where tickets cost more than my monthly utility bills. But for years, none of that had mattered to my grandchildren. Lily and Max would beg to spend weekends at my house. We'd make pasta from scratch, tend to my vegetable garden, and have taste-testing competitions with blindfolds where they'd try to identify the spices and ingredients I'd used. Lily especially had shown a natural talent, her palate surprisingly sophisticated for a child. She was curious and enthusiastic, her face lighting up when she correctly identified a subtle hint of cardamom or saffron. When she was 11, I took Lily to the Cedar Valley Farmers Market for the first time. I watched her eyes widen as she took in the vibrant displays of produce, the artisan cheeses, the energy of people connected to their food. "Abuela," she had whispered, clutching my hand. "I want to learn everything about cooking. Everything." Something in my heart had shifted that day. I'd been selling small batches of my homemade sauces at the market for a couple of years. Nothing extraordinary, just traditional recipes I'd perfected over decades. But seeing Lily's enthusiasm, I made a decision. The next week, I approached Marcus Highland, the owner and head chef at Harvest Table, who often sourced ingredients from the same market. What no one in my family knew was that Roberto had been incredibly wise with our savings and the small inheritance from his parents. While we lived modestly, we had accumulated enough for me to be comfortable. After his death, I found myself with more financial security than my children realized, but little purpose until my cooking filled that void. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Marcus had said, clearly surprised after tasting the 5 sauces I'd brought him. "These are exceptional. The depth of flavor, the balance. I'd like to feature them at Harvest Table." "On one condition," I had replied, "complete anonymity. I don't want my name on menus or mentioned to patrons." He had agreed, though reluctantly. People who created food this good usually wanted recognition. He said, "I just wanted to share the recipes that had been passed down through generations while honoring my own adaptations and creativity." Over the years, my contribution to Harvest Table expanded beyond sauces. I developed seasonal specialties, consulted on menu items, and even helped train some of the junior kitchen staff in traditional techniques. The arrangement brought in a comfortable supplemental income that I mostly saved or quietly donated to the community center's culinary program for underprivileged youth. As Lily grew into her teens, something began to change. The weekends at my house became less frequent. When she did visit, she was often glued to her phone, texting friends or scrolling through social media with a bored expression. David and Vanessa encouraged her new interests: designer clothes, exclusive summer programs, friendships with the children of their social circle. I told myself it was normal, that teenagers naturally pull away from their grandparents. Max still came regularly, but even he was starting to become more interested in video games than cooking lessons. When Lily turned 14, she began taking food styling classes, not because she loved cooking, but because Vanessa thought it would look good on college applications. I attended her birthday dinner at Harvest Table, sitting quietly at the high end of the table while David and Vanessa hosted an elaborate celebration. Lily hugged me briefly before being whisked away to take photos with her friends near the restaurant's famous living herb wall. "Thanks for coming, Abuela," she had said, already looking past me to her approaching friends. I consoled myself with the knowledge that at least she was enjoying food from recipes I had helped create, even if she didn't know it. Then came the dinner party invitation and subsequent text. "Maybe you could just drop off the food, or eat, in the kitchen?" I set down my phone beside the pot of pozole, feeling something shift inside me. Not just hurt, though there was plenty of that, but something else. A quiet resolve forming like the steam rising from the pot before me. I typed back, "I understand. I'll make sure everything is perfect." Then I set my phone down and picked up my recipe journal. It was time to make a call to Chef Marcus. The next day, I met Jack Harrison at the community center where we both volunteered teaching cooking classes. At 60, Jack had the kind of relaxed confidence that comes from decades of professional kitchen experience before retiring to teach. His salt and pepper hair was always slightly unruly, his hazel eyes warm behind tortoiseshell glasses that somehow managed to suit his weathered face perfectly. "You look troubled, Elena," he said as he chopped vegetables alongside me, preparing for our afternoon class. "What's happening?" I hesitated, then showed him David's text. Jack read it, his expression darkening. "That's quite something," he said carefully. "Your own son asking you to essentially cater their party but not join as a guest?" "I've spent years cooking for them, nurturing them through food," I said, the hurt rising in my voice. "And now I'm an embarrassment they'd rather keep in the kitchen." Jack set down his knife. "What do they think you do with your time? Surely they know about your connection to Harvest Table." I laughed, despite myself. "They have no idea. To them, I'm just their mother who cooks traditional food. Nothing special or impressive." "Then perhaps," Jack said thoughtfully, "it's time they learned otherwise." "What do you mean?" "You've kept your culinary accomplishments quiet for admirable reasons, Elena. But maybe it's time your family understood exactly who they're asking to drop off food and eat in the kitchen." I thought about his words all the way home. That evening, as I harvested herbs from my garden for test recipes, I considered what Jack had said. My anonymity had been a choice, one that perhaps had outlived its purpose. Inside, I pulled out the folder of correspondence with Harvest Table. Notes on seasonal menus, thank you letters from Chef Marcus, invitations to private tasting events I rarely attended. I had always believed that cooking should be its own reward, that attaching my name to my culinary creations would somehow diminish the pure joy I found in feeding others. But now I wondered if I had been hiding my light out of humility or fear of David and Vanessa's reactions, certainly, but perhaps also fear of disrupting the image my family had of me. The simple grandmother who made comfort food and told stories. That image clearly no longer served either of us. I picked up my phone and texted David. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'll prepare the food as requested. However, I've also been invited to a chef's event at Harvest Table that same evening. Perhaps we could schedule a different day for your dinner party? His response came quickly. Chef's event? Why would you be invited to that? I smiled to myself. I have a professional connection to the restaurant. Sleep well, dear. I set my phone down without elaborating, knowing the seed of curiosity had been planted. The following week, I received a formal invitation to the Harvest Table seasonal menu launch event that happened to fall on the same night as David's dinner party. Chef Marcus had always invited me, though I had attended only twice before, preferring to maintain my low profile. This time, I RSVP'd with a yes. Then, I did something else I rarely indulged in. I went shopping, not at my usual department store, but at an upscale boutique in Westbridge. I selected a simple but elegant burgundy dress with a subtle pattern that reminded me of fall leaves, had my hair styled at a salon instead of trimming it myself, and even splurged on a professional manicure. If I was going to step out of the shadows, I wanted to do it on my own terms. As I prepared each of the 18 dishes David and Vanessa had requested, I put extra care into their presentation. These weren't just family recipes anymore. They were a statement, a reflection of decades of skill development and passion that had gone unrecognized by the people who should have valued it most. I carefully packed everything into insulated containers, labeling each with detailed reheating instructions. Then I called a local delivery service instead of bringing them myself as expected. With the food on its way, I dressed for the Harvest Table event, studying my reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at me seemed different somehow, more confident perhaps, more willing to claim her due. The evening of the Harvest Table event arrived with perfect autumn weather. The restaurant looked magical with soft lighting illuminating the converted historic mill building, strings of lights crisscrossing the outdoor seating area along the river. As I parked my car, the same reliable sedan I'd driven for years, I noticed the gleaming luxury vehicles surrounding it. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the same insecurity that David and Vanessa's world always triggered in me. Then I straightened. My shoulders took a deep breath and walked toward the entrance, my heels clicking softly on the stone pathway. Inside, the restaurant buzzed with conversation. Well-dressed patrons held wine glasses. Local food critics mingled with wealthy. Regulars and staff navigated the crowd with trays of appetizers featuring my romesco sauce. I accepted a glass of sparkling wine from a young server who looked about Lily's age and found a quiet corner to observe. I hadn't told Chef Marcus that I was actually attending this time, wanting to maintain my low profile until the appropriate moment. But it wasn't long before he spotted me, his eyebrows rising in surprise before he excused himself from a conversation and made his way over. "Elena," he said warmly, taking my hand in both of his. "What a wonderful surprise. You look remarkable." "Thank you, Marcus," I said. I decided it was time to actually attend one of these events I help create. He smiled, a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Any particular reason for the change of heart? Let's just say I'm reconsidering certain choices, I replied. How is the new autumn menu being received? We chatted about restaurant business for a few minutes before he was called away to greet other guests. As he left, I spotted Jack entering the hall, distinguished in his dark suit. Our eyes met across the room, and he gave me a subtle nod of approval. I was just making my way toward him when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Abuela? I turned, to find Lily staring at me, her expression a mixture of shock and confusion. She was dressed in a server's uniform, a tray of empty glasses in her hands. "Hello, Lily," I said calmly. "You work here?" "It's my first night," she said, lowering her voice. "Dad helped me get the job. What are you doing here? This event is for important restaurant people and food critics." "Yes, I'm aware," I said, taking a sip of my sparkling wine. "That's why I received an invitation." Her eyes narrowed. "You said you had a professional connection, but this dinner is only for people who are actually involved with the restaurant." "That's correct." Before she could respond, Chef Marcus appeared at my side, unaware of the tension between us. "Elena, I wonder if I might steal you away for a moment. There are some local food writers who have been very eager to meet you," he said, then noticed Lily. "Ah, you must be our new server. How is your first night going?" "She's my granddaughter," I said quietly. Chef Marcus looked between us, realization dawning on his face. "Your granddaughter? But that would mean—" He stopped himself. "Elena, you never mentioned your granddaughter was working at Harvest Table." It never seemed relevant to our discussions about the seasonal sauces or the new entree recipes, I said mildly. Lily was staring at me now, her tray of glasses forgotten. "Seasonal sauces? But those are what make this place famous. Everyone says some anonymous chef creates them." "Not entirely anonymous," Chef Marcus said carefully, looking to me for permission. I nodded slightly. "Your grandmother has been Harvest Table's most significant culinary collaborator for nearly 6 years," he said gently to Lily. "The signature sauces, several of our most popular entrees, and our special event menus all showcase her exceptional talents. She's the secret weapon I mention in interviews." The color drained from Lily's face. "But that's not possible. You cook at home. You wear the same apron you've had forever. Dad always says—" She stopped abruptly. "What does your father say?" I asked, though I could guess. Lily looked down. "Nothing. I should get back to work." She hurried away, leaving me standing with Chef Marcus, who looked genuinely concerned. "I apologize if I overstepped," he said. "I had no idea she was your granddaughter, or that she didn't know about your relationship with Harvest Table." "It's fine, Marcus," I assured him. "It's time certain truths came to light." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I was introduced to food writers and restaurant critics, engaged in conversations about culinary techniques, and even promised to consider being featured in an upcoming local chef spotlight series. Jack stayed close by, offering quiet support, and occasionally squeezing my hand when he sensed my energy flagging. I didn't see Lily again until the event was winding down. I was saying goodbye to a local journalist when I felt a presence at my elbow. "Can we talk?" Lily asked quietly. "My shift is over." We found a quiet table in the now empty riverside patio, the soft lights reflecting in the water before us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Lily finally asked. "About all of this?" She gestured toward the restaurant. I considered my answer carefully. "Your grandfather left us more financially secure than your father realizes. When he passed away, I needed something meaningful to fill my days. Cooking had always been my passion, and one thing led to another. I chose to keep it private because I wanted my creations to be appreciated for their quality, not because they came from your grandmother." "But why keep it a secret from us? Dad and Mom are always talking about how exclusive this place is, how hard it is to get reservations." I sighed. Your parents have their own measures of success, Lily. They value certain things, appearances, status, the right connections. I value different things, the perfect balance of flavors, techniques passed down through generations, the joy on someone's face when they taste something exceptional. Lily was quiet for a long time, her fingers twisting in her lap. I've been awful to you, she finally said, her voice small. The way I stopped coming over, acting bored when you tried to teach me cooking techniques. You hurt me, I acknowledged. But I understand that at your age, fitting in seems vitally important. It's not just that, she said. Mom and Dad are always talking about image, about how important it is to associate with the right people. When I told them I got this job, Mom said I should never mention that I learned cooking from you, that I should say I took classes somewhere more prestigious. The words stung, but they weren't surprising. Vanessa had always viewed my culinary background as quaint at best, embarrassing at worst. And you agreed with her assessment? I asked, not as a question. I thought I did, Lily admitted. But now I feel like I don't know anything anymore. You're this important person at the restaurant where I just started working, and I've been treating you like you're... She couldn't finish. Like I'm just an embarrassing old-fashioned grandmother, I finished for her. It's all right to say, it, Lily. That's how you've seen me. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I reached over and took her hand. The question is, what happens now? Lily looked up at me, her expression uncertain. What do you mean? Now that you know about my relationship with Harvest Table, about my professional standing in the culinary world, does that change how you see me? Am I suddenly less embarrassing because I have connections to a restaurant your parents consider prestigious? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked gently. You've been avoiding spending time with me for months. What's changed in the last 2 hours except your perception of my status? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. I softened, reaching up to wipe away her tears. I don't say this to hurt you, Lily, but I need you to understand that a person's worth isn't measured by where they work or who knows their name. The grandmother who taught you to identify spices blindfolded, who showed you how to feel when pasta dough is just right. That's still who I am. The only difference is now you know I also have the skills to help create menus at an upscale restaurant. I miss that, grandmother, she said softly. I miss who I was when I was with you, too. Those words touched something deep inside me. She's still here, I said. And so is that girl, underneath all the pressure to fit in and be someone you think others want you to be. Lily leaned her head against my shoulder, something she hadn't done in years. What do I tell Mom and Dad? About tonight? About you? That's up to you, I said. But eventually they'll need to know the truth about Harvest Table, about my culinary work, about all of it. They're going to freak out, she murmured. Probably, I agreed, but that's not your problem to solve. We sat in silence for a while, watching the lights from the restaurant ripple across the river water. Finally, Lily straightened up. Wait, what about Dad's dinner party? Weren't you supposed to cook for that tonight? I smiled. I did cook for it. Everything was delivered, precisely at 5:30 as requested. But you're here, she said, confused. Yes, I agreed. Exactly where I was invited to be, as a respected culinary contributor, not hidden away in someone's kitchen. Lily's eyes widened, then she laughed, a genuine sound that reminded me of her childhood. Oh my God, Dad must be losing his mind. Right now. Perhaps, I said mildly. Or perhaps he's finally gaining some perspective. As we walked back toward the parking area, Lily asked, Who was that man you were talking to? The one with the gray hair and glasses? Jack? He's a friend, a retired professional chef. We teach cooking classes together at the community center. Just a friend? she asked with a hint of her old curiosity. I felt a warmth rise to my cheeks that had nothing to do with the evening's revelations. For now, I said simply. Lily grinned. Abuela, I think there's a lot more about you I need to learn. I think you might be right, I agreed, squeezing her hand. As I watched her walk toward her car, her figure receding into the darkness, I felt a cautious hope. The path forward wouldn't be simple. David and Vanessa would indeed freak out, as Lily had put it. Years of carefully constructed family dynamics would need to be renegotiated. But for the first time in a long while, I felt fully seen. Not just as a grandmother, not just as a cook, but as Elena Rodriguez, a woman with her own life, choices, and possibilities still ahead. I took out my phone and saw 6 missed calls from David. Instead of returning them, I texted Jack. Breakfast tomorrow? I have quite a story to tell you. His reply came immediately. I can't wait to hear it. 9 a.m. at the corner cafe. I smiled to myself as I got into my car. Sometimes, being asked to cook 18 dishes and eat in the kitchen led to the most surprising outcomes. And sometimes stepping out of the shadows was exactly what both you and the people you love needed most. The quiet drive back to my modest Oakdale home gave me time to process the evening's events. Streetlights cast intermittent glows across my dashboard as I navigated the winding roads, my mind replaying Lily's expressions, from shock to disbelief, to that glimmer of reconnection I'd seen at the end of our conversation. I wondered if this fragile new understanding between us would survive the harsh light of morning, or if David and Vanessa's influence would reassert itself once my granddaughter had time to think. My phone buzzed repeatedly on the passenger seat. David, calling for the 8th time. I let it go to voicemail, not yet ready for that conversation. When I arrived home, I kicked off my heels and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at my herb garden illuminated by moonlight. The carefully tended rows of basil, oregano, thyme, and rosemary gleamed silver in the darkness. How many of tonight's dishes at Harvest Table had included herbs from these plants? How many family meals had been enhanced by their flavors? Sleep came fitfully that night. I dreamed of Roberto, of our early days running a small neighborhood, taqueria before children came along, counting tips and planning for a future that seemed both ambitious and impossibly distant. Your cooking will be recognized someday, Elena, he used to say. Just wait and see. His predictions had proven more accurate than either of us could have imagined, though he hadn't lived to witness my culinary partnership with one of the region's most celebrated restaurants. Morning arrived with soft autumn sunshine streaming through my kitchen curtains. I was just finishing my first cup of coffee when I heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, I saw David marching up my front walk, his posture rigid with what appeared to be barely contained anger. So much for having that conversation on my own terms. I opened the door before he could knock, greeting him with deliberate calm. Good morning, David. Would you like some coffee? He brushed past me into the house, turning to face me with accusation written across his features. At 34, my son was handsome in a polished way, every hair in place, his button-down shirt and designer jeans carefully selected to appear casually expensive. What was that about last night? He demanded without preamble. We had 20 people waiting for you to arrive with the food, and instead some delivery service shows up with no explanation. I closed the door quietly and moved to pour him coffee, despite his agitation. The food arrived exactly when it was supposed to, David. Everything properly labeled with heating instructions. That's not the point. He ran a hand through his carefully styled hair. You were supposed to be there to serve it, to explain the dishes. The Millers were asking about you. I set a mug of coffee on the counter between us. The Millers? The same people who were apparently the reason I couldn't have a seat at the table? He had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable. That was a misunderstanding. Vanessa just thought... I know exactly what Vanessa thought, I interrupted gently. that I'm not polished enough for your social circle, that I would somehow embarrass you. That's not fair, Mom. Isn't it? I leaned against the counter, studying my son's face. When had he become so foreign to me? When had status and appearances become more important to him than genuine connection? You asked me to prepare 18 different dishes, a task that took 3 full days, and then suggested I should eat in the kitchen rather than join your guests. It wasn't like that, he protested weakly. It was exactly like that, David. Your text message was quite clear. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. Where were you anyway? Your message said something about Harvest Table? Yes, I confirmed. I was attending their seasonal menu launch event as an invited guest. His expression shifted to confusion. Why would they invite you to something like that? I took a deliberate sip of my coffee, letting the question hang in the air between us, because I'm a significant contributor to their culinary program. What does that mean? David's voice held equal parts skepticism and bewilderment. It means those signature sauces everyone raves about at Harvest Table, the ones you and Vanessa love to mention when you're trying to impress people with your sophisticated palate. I created them, all of them. I've been developing recipes and seasonal menu items for Chef Marcus for 6 years. David stared at me, his coffee forgotten. That's not possible. And yet, it's true, I replied calmly. Ask your daughter. She works there now. She saw me being introduced to food critics and journalists last night. Lily was there? He asked, momentarily distracted. She didn't mention that when she came home. I imagine she has a lot to process, I said. Finding out her grandmother, whom she's been encouraged to view as embarrassingly old-fashioned, is actually respected in culinary circles must be quite a shock. The accusation landed precisely as intended. David's face flushed. We never said, "You were embarrassing." Not in those exact words, perhaps, I conceded. But actions speak louder, he-ho. When was the last time you proudly introduced me to your friends? When was the last time you asked about my life, my interests, my activities? You see me as nothing but your mother who cooks traditional food. Convenient when you need feeding. Invisible when you're crafting your sophisticated image. David set his untouched coffee down with too much force, liquid sloshing over the rim. That's completely unfair. We're busy. Work, the kids, social obligations. Not everyone has unlimited time to what? I interrupted. To recognize the full humanity of your own mother? To teach your children to value people for who they are rather than what status they bring? My son looked as if I'd slapped him. We'd never spoken to each other this directly before. I'd always been accommodating, understanding, willing to make excuses for his and Vanessa's behavior. Something about last night had broken that pattern irrevocably. Why didn't you ever tell us? He finally asked, his voice quieter. About Harvest Table? I moved to my kitchen window, looking out at the herb garden now bathed in morning light. Would it have mattered, David? Would you have seen me differently if you'd known I was connected to a restaurant you consider prestigious? What does that say about how you measure a person's worth? He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. I need to go, he said finally. Vanessa is waiting in the car. We have brunch reservations at the club. Of course you do, I said, not unkindly. We can continue this conversation another time. He paused at the door. The food was excellent, by the way. Everyone raved about it. Thank you, I said, recognizing this awkward attempt at reconciliation for what it was. After he left, I stood in my kitchen feeling strangely empty and full at the same time. Empty of the need to please that had driven so many of my choices, full of a new resolve to be recognized for my true self. My phone chimed with a text message from Jack. Still on for breakfast? I glanced at the clock. I had just enough time to change clothes and meet him. Absolutely, I replied. I have updates. The corner cafe was bustling with Sunday morning patrons when I arrived. Jack was already seated at a table by the window, 2 steaming mugs of tea waiting. At 60, he had the relaxed confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. His culinary career had taken him from prestigious restaurants in Chicago to teaching positions at culinary schools before he'd settled in our area to be closer to his daughter and grandchildren. "You look like a woman with a story to tell," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. "Several, actually," I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Lily now knows about my connection to Harvest Table. She was working there last night." Jack's eyebrows rose. That must have been quite a revelation for her. "It was," I confirmed, "and David showed up at my house this morning, furious about the dinner party." "How did that go?" I recounted the conversation with my son, finding it easier to articulate my feelings now that I'd had the first confrontation. "You know," Jack said thoughtfully when I finished, "families often create fixed narratives about each member. This is who Mom is. This is her role. Those narratives become comfortable, even when they're reductive or plain wrong. When someone steps outside that narrative, everything gets disrupted," I finished. "The whole family system has to readjust." "Exactly." He reached across the table to cover my hand with his. "Are you ready for that disruption, Elena? Because there will be more uncomfortable conversations." "I think I am," I said, surprising myself with my certainty. "I've spent years accommodating their narrative about who I am. It's time they accommodated the truth." Jack's eyes crinkled with approval. "That's what I admire about you. Beneath that accommodating exterior is a woman of remarkable strength." The simple observation warmed me more than the tea. After Roberto died, I'd received plenty of sympathy, plenty of offers of help, but few people had recognized or acknowledged my inner resilience. "I've been thinking," I said, changing the subject slightly, "about the community center cooking program." Jack nodded encouragingly. "We both volunteered there, teaching cooking skills to disadvantaged youth and families struggling with food insecurity. What if we expanded it?" I continued. "Created an actual culinary training program, something that could lead to job opportunities." "That would require significant funding," Jack noted. "I know." I took a deep breath. "I've been saving most of what I earn from Harvest Table. Roberto left me more financially secure than my children realize. I could make a substantial contribution to get it started." Jack studied me, his expression thoughtful. "This is part of the disruption, isn't it? Stepping fully into your power, not just culinarily, but financially as well." "I suppose it is," I admitted. "I've kept so much of myself hidden. My culinary expertise, my financial security, my ambitions for what I could contribute. It's time to change that." "I think it's a brilliant idea," Jack said firmly, "and I'd be honored to help develop the program with you." We spent the next hour sketching possibilities on cafe napkins, curriculum outlines, potential community partnerships, equipment needs. The embryonic idea began taking more concrete shape, fueled by our combined expertise and shared passion for food education. As we were wrapping up, I received a text from Lily. "Can I come over today? Need to talk more." "My granddaughter wants to visit," I told Jack, unable to keep the pleasure from my voice. "That's progress already," he observed. "The narrative is shifting." We parted with plans to meet later in the week to continue developing the culinary program proposal. As I drove home, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. The freedom of authenticity, of no longer constraining myself to meet others' limited expectations. Lily arrived mid-afternoon, her expression more serious than I'd seen in years. I welcomed her with a hug, noting how she returned it with unexpected fervor. "I couldn't sleep last night," she said as we settled in my kitchen, the place where our best conversations had always happened. "I kept thinking about everything, about how I've been acting, about what you said." I began preparing hot chocolate. the way she'd loved as a child, with real chocolate melted into warm milk, a cinnamon stick stirred through, and just a pinch of chili powder. "And what conclusions did you reach?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "That I've been really shallow," she said bluntly, watching me work. "That I let Mom and Dad's values become my values without questioning them." The frank self-assessment surprised me. At 14, Lily was showing more self-awareness than many adults I knew. "You're at an age when fitting in feels vital," I said, handing her a steaming mug. "It's natural to adopt the values of the people around you." "Maybe," she conceded. "But that doesn't make it right. The way I treated you, Abuela, the things I said and didn't say. We can't change the past," I told her gently. "We can only decide what happens now." She curled her hands around the mug, inhaling the familiar scent. "I want to learn from you again," she said quietly. "Not just cooking, but everything. How to know what really matters." Something tightened in my chest. A bittersweet ache of love and hope intermingled. "I'd like that very much." "I have so many questions," she continued, sipping her chocolate. "About the restaurant, about how you got involved with them, about why you kept it secret." I settled across from her at the kitchen table. "What would you like to know first?" "Everything," she said, echoing her younger self at the farmer's market years ago. "I want to know everything." So I told her about my early passion for cooking, about the small taqueria Roberto and I had run when we were first married, about how my market stand had caught Chef Marcus's attention. I explained my desire for anonymity, my preference for letting the food speak for itself rather than building a personal brand around my name. "But didn't you want recognition?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. "Mom always says building your personal brand is essential." "Recognition from whom?" I countered gently. "The people who matter to me have always recognized my cooking. Your grandfather, the community center families, you and Max when you were younger." But you could have been famous," she insisted. "You could have had your own cookbook, maybe even a cooking show." I laughed softly. "Those things might matter to your mother, Mija, but they've never mattered to me. I cook because it brings me joy, because food connects people, because passing down these techniques and flavors is my way of preserving culture. Fame would have been a distraction." She considered this, her expression thoughtful. "I don't think I've ever met anyone who actively avoided fame before. There are many forms of success," I told her. "Some are very visible. Money, status, recognition. Others are deeper, more lasting. Impact, connection, contribution. I've always valued the second kind more." "Is that why you never told Dad about the money Grandpa Roberto left?" she asked, surprising me with her insight. "Because you knew he would see it differently?" I nodded slowly. "Your father has always equated money with success. I feared if he knew about our financial security, he would either resent not having access to it or view me differently because of it. Neither seemed healthy." "But it created distance," Lily observed. "Secrets always do, don't they?" From the mouths of babes, I thought, struck by the wisdom in her observation. Yes, they do, which is why I'm reconsidering many of my choices. Like showing up at Harvest Table last night? Exactly like that. I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Sometimes the need for authenticity outweighs the comfort of old patterns, even when disruption follows. We spent hours talking that afternoon about cooking techniques, about the community center classes, about Jack, definitely not just a friend, Abuela, I saw how you look at him, about her new job at Harvest Table. She asked to see my recipe, journals, paging through them with newfound respect, recognizing dishes she'd eaten at the restaurant in my handwritten notes. "Could we cook together?" she asked as afternoon shifted toward evening. "Like we used to?" "I'd love nothing more," I said, my heart full. We decided on chiles rellenos. one of the more complex dishes I'd taught her years ago, before she'd become too cool for grandmother's cooking lessons. I watched her hands remember what her mind had forgotten: how to char the poblanos just right, how to carefully remove the skins without tearing the flesh, how to stuff them with the perfect balance of cheese, herbs, and spices. "It's like riding a bike," she said, surprised at how naturally the techniques came back to her. "My hands remember. Cooking is as much physical memory as it is knowledge," I told her. "Your body remembers what your grandmother taught you, even when your mind is elsewhere." As we worked side by side, I sensed something healing between us, a reconnection to traditions and bonds that had been temporarily obscured but never truly broken. The chilies were just coming out of the oil, perfectly golden and fragrant, when the doorbell rang. We exchanged glances, both of us knowing who it likely was. "It's probably Mom and Dad," Lily said, her expression falling slightly. "They texted earlier asking where I was." "Then we should set 2 more places," I said calmly, though I felt a flutter of apprehension. This confrontation was inevitable, but I'd hoped for more time to prepare. When I opened the door, David and Vanessa stood on my porch looking stiff and uncomfortable. Vanessa, as always, was impeccably put together, her dark hair arranged in an artful twist, her casual Sunday outfit probably costing more than most people's formal wear. "We're here to pick up Lily," Vanessa said before I could greet them. "She hasn't been answering her phone." "She's been helping me cook," I replied. "Won't you come in? We were just sitting down to dinner." They hesitated, clearly torn between wanting to extract their daughter and not wanting to appear rude. The aroma of chiles rellenos wafting from the kitchen made the decision for them. "I suppose we could stay for a quick bite," David said, shooting a glance at his wife. I led them into the dining room where Lily was setting the table for 4, as if she'd anticipated their arrival. The look that passed between mother and daughter was complex, part challenge, part apology, part stubborn determination. "It smells amazing, Abuela," Lily said pointedly, "just like the ones we used to make together." "Lily has a natural talent in the kitchen," I told David and Vanessa as we settled around the table. "She made most of tonight's dinner herself." Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "You've been cooking? I thought you were just visiting your grandmother." "I've been reconnecting with something I love," Lily replied with surprising firmness. "Something I'd forgotten was important to me." The undercurrent of tension was palpable as I served the meal: chiles rellenos, Spanish rice, black beans with epazote, and handmade tortillas. Simple food, deeply flavorful, representing generations of culinary knowledge. "This is delicious," David acknowledged after his first bite, genuine appreciation in his voice despite the awkwardness. "Thank you," Lily said before I could respond. "It's Abuela's recipe, but I made it." "With considerable skill," I added. Vanessa took small, careful bites, her expression unreadable. "It's very authentic," she finally offered, making the word sound vaguely like a criticism. "That's the point of traditional cooking," I replied mildly. "Authenticity is the goal, not a limitation." David cleared his throat. "Mom, about last night." "Perhaps we should discuss that later," I suggested, with a meaningful glance toward Lily. "No, I want to hear this," my granddaughter said firmly. "I want to understand why you and Mom didn't think Abuela deserved a seat at your table." Vanessa's fork clattered against her plate. "That's not what happened, Lily. You're dramatizing." "The situation." "Am I?" Lily pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then read aloud. "By the way, we've maxed out the seating. Maybe you could just drop off the food, or eat in the kitchen." That was Dad's exact text to Abuela. David had the grace to look ashamed. "It was poorly worded. I didn't mean—" "You did mean it," I interrupted gently. "Let's at least be honest with each other, David. You and Vanessa were embarrassed by the thought of including me in your carefully curated dinner party. I don't fit the image you're trying to project." "That's ridiculous," Vanessa protested, though her eyes slid away from mine. "We value family above everything." "You value the appearance of family," I corrected. "The perfect family photos for social media, the narrative of close family ties when it serves your purposes. But when it comes to genuine inclusion, to valuing each family member for who they truly are, that's where the gap appears. This is exactly why we didn't want—" Vanessa began, then stopped abruptly, realizing what she was about to admit. "Didn't want what?" Lily pressed. "Abuela at your dinner party? Because she's not sophisticated enough? Because her clothes aren't expensive enough?" "Lily," David warned, "that's enough." "No, it's not," she fired back. "Do you know what I learned last night? That the restaurant you and Mom are always trying to impress people with, Harvest Table, features Abuela's recipes. The sauces you rave about to the Millers, Abuela created them. The chef you try to claim as a personal acquaintance, he considers Abuela his secret weapon." The stunned silence that followed was deeply satisfying. "Is this true?" Vanessa finally asked, turning to me with disbelief. "Every word," I confirmed. "I've been developing recipes for Harvest Table for 6 years. The seasonal tasting menu you attended for your anniversary last month? I created 4 of those dishes." David set down his fork slowly. "I don't understand. Why would you keep this from us?" I considered the question carefully, aware that my answer would shape whatever came next for our family. "I kept many things from you," I acknowledged. "My culinary work, the financial security your father left me, my involvement with the community center cooking program. Partly because these things were mine alone. Not everything needs to be shared. But partly, if I'm being honest, because I knew how you would see them." "What does that mean?" David asked, defensiveness creeping into his tone. "It means I knew you would suddenly see value in things you'd previously dismissed. Not because they had changed, but because their status in your eyes had changed. My cooking wasn't impressive when it was just your mother's traditional recipes. Now that those same techniques have Chef Marcus's stamp of approval, suddenly they matter." The uncomfortable truth hung in the air between us. "I never meant to make you feel that way," David said quietly. "I know you didn't," I replied. "But intention and impact are different things, Hiho. You've both taught Lily and Max, whether you meant to or not, that status matters more than substance, that appearances matter more than authenticity." Vanessa opened her mouth as if to protest, then closed it again, her expression troubled. "The food is getting cold," I said gently. "Let's finish our meal, and then perhaps we can talk more openly about where we go from here." The rest of dinner passed in thoughtful silence, each of us processing the seismic shifts occurring in our family dynamics. When the plates were finally empty, Lily stood to clear the table. "I'll help," Vanessa said unexpectedly, rising to join her daughter. As they disappeared into the kitchen, David turned to me with an expression I hadn't seen since he was a child. Vulnerable, uncertain, seeking guidance. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," I told him. "Just listen. Try to understand that there's more to the people you love than the roles you've assigned them. Even your mother." He nodded slowly. "When did things get so complicated between us?" "They've always been complicated," I said with a small smile. "That's what family is, a beautiful, messy, complicated blessing." From the kitchen came the sound of running water and the soft murmur of voices. Lily and Vanessa washing dishes, together, perhaps finding their own path toward understanding. Outside my dining room window, the setting sun cast long shadows across my herb garden. Tomorrow would bring more conversations, more adjustments, more steps toward authentic connection. But for today, this small family dinner, born from confrontation but evolving toward reconciliation, felt like the first meal of a new chapter. The week that followed our tense family dinner unfolded in unexpected ways. David called every day. Our conversations tentative at first, then gradually more substantive. He asked questions about my culinary background, about Roberto's financial planning, about my partnership with Harvest Table. Questions he'd never bothered to ask before. I sensed him struggling to reconcile the mother he thought he knew with the woman now emerging from the shadows. Vanessa remained more distant, though Lily reported she'd overheard her parents having long, intense discussions late into the night. Change was brewing, though its exact nature remained to be seen. On Wednesday morning, I met Jack at the community center to further develop our culinary training program proposal. We commandeered a corner table in the empty dining hall, spreading documents across its surface, budget projections, curriculum outlines, equipment lists. If we start with 2 cohorts of 8 students each, Jack suggested, we can maintain quality instruction while keeping equipment costs manageable. I nodded, making notes in the margins of his draft budget. We should prioritize knife skills and basic techniques first, building blocks that translate across all cuisines. And emphasize food safety certification, Jack added. That's immediately marketable for employment. We worked companionably for hours, our expertise complementing each other, his formal culinary training balancing my intuitive approach, my community connections augmenting his professional network. By lunchtime, we had a comprehensive proposal, taking shape. As we paused for coffee, Jack leaned back in his chair, studying me with that penetrating gaze that always made me feel transparent. "You seem different this week," he observed. "More present." I considered his assessment. "I feel different. Like I've finally stopped playing a role and started being fully myself." "It suits you," he said simply, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Our quiet moment was interrupted by Sandra Moore, the community center director, poking her head into the dining hall. "Elena, I was hoping I'd find you here. Do you have a minute?" I waved her over to our table, quickly introducing her to Jack. Sandra, a tireless advocate for community programming, had always supported the cooking classes I volunteered to teach. "I just got off the phone with Marcus Highland," she said, settling into a chair beside us. "From Harvest Table? He wants to discuss a possible partnership with our center." Jack and I exchanged glances of surprise. "What kind of partnership?" I asked cautiously. "A mentorship program for promising culinary students," Sandra explained, her excitement evident. "Internship opportunities, equipment donations, guest chef workshops. He specifically mentioned wanting to coordinate with you, Elena. Said you were the inspiration." I sat back, momentarily speechless. Marcus and I had never discussed extending our collaboration to include the community center. "That's unexpected," I managed finally. "But perfectly timed," Jack interjected smoothly, gesturing to our paperwork. "We've been developing a proposal for an expanded culinary training program here. Marcus's involvement could be transformative." Sandra's eyes widened as she scanned our documents. "This is exactly what we've needed. The center's cooking classes are always waitlisted, but we've never had the resources to develop a true vocational program. We need funding," I acknowledged. "Equipment, instructor stipends, food costs." "I'm prepared to contribute significantly," I continued. "And with Harvest Table's involvement, we could approach other restaurants and suppliers for additional support." Sandra looked between Jack and me, her expression turning thoughtful. "You two make quite a team," she observed. "How long have you been working on this?" "Not long," Jack admitted with a smile in my direction. "But when the right collaboration comes along, things tend to move quickly." The knowing glance Sandra gave us suggested she was interpreting our partnership as extending beyond the professional realm. She wasn't entirely wrong. "I'm meeting Marcus for coffee tomorrow morning," Sandra said, standing to leave. "Would you both join us? I think this conversation would benefit from having all parties at the table from the beginning." After confirming, The details. Sandra hurried off to her next appointment, leaving Jack and me contemplating this unexpected development. Do you think Marcus is doing this because of what happened at the dinner party? I wondered. Jack considered the question. Perhaps partly, but good ideas often need a catalyst. Maybe seeing you step into your full identity gave him the push to expand his own thinking about the restaurant's role in the community. I began gathering our papers, my mind already racing with possibilities. This could change everything for the program. Professional connections, equipment, mentorship. And for the center's reputation, Jack added. A partnership with Harvest. Table brings prestige that could attract other funding sources. We spent another hour refining our proposal in light of this potential partnership before parting ways. As I drove home, I reflected on the strange sequence of events that had brought me to this moment. A hurtful text message had triggered a cascade of revelations that were now rippling outward in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I had just finished unloading groceries when my doorbell rang. Opening the door revealed Vanessa standing on my porch, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Her usual polished appearance was slightly diminished, her hair in a simple ponytail, her makeup minimal. "Do you have a few minutes?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "Of course," I replied, stepping back to welcome her inside. "Would you like some tea?" She nodded, following me to the kitchen with none of her usual commentary about my quaint decor or outdated appliances. As I put the kettle on, she perched awkwardly on a stool at my kitchen island. "David doesn't know I'm here," she said abruptly. "I wanted to speak with you alone." I kept my expression neutral as I selected loose tea leaves and warmed the pot. "I'm listening." Vanessa watched my hands work, seemingly gathering her thoughts. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since Sunday dinner," she finally said. "About the way we've treated you. The way I've treated you." The kettle whistled, giving me a moment to absorb her words. I poured the hot water over the leaves, releasing their fragrant aroma into the kitchen. "You don't owe me an explanation, Vanessa," I said, placing the teapot between us to steep. "I think I do," she countered, meeting my eyes directly for perhaps the first time since I'd known her. "I've been dismissive of you, of your cooking, your lifestyle, your values. I've encouraged Lily to see you the same way." Her candor surprised me. Vanessa had always seemed the least likely to acknowledge any fault in her approach to family dynamics. "May I ask why?" I inquired gently. She sighed, running a finger along the edge of my countertop. "It's complicated. Partly insecurity, I suppose. I come from a family where appearance was everything, where status determined worth. When I met David, I was drawn to his ambition, his desire to climb professionally and socially." I poured the tea, giving her space to continue. "You represented something that made me uncomfortable," she admitted. "Contentment with simplicity, finding satisfaction in things that couldn't be displayed or leveraged for social capital. It challenged the values I'd been raised with, the ones I'd built my adult life around." The unexpected vulnerability in her confession disarmed me. I'd always viewed Vanessa as thoroughly confident in her worldview. "I understand more than you might think," I told her. "We all construct our lives around certain values, certain assumptions. Having those questioned can feel threatening." She wrapped her hands around the teacup, seeming to draw strength from its warmth. "Finding out about your connection to Harvest. Table. It forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about how I measure worth. Not just yours, but everyone's, including my own." "And what conclusions have you reached?" I asked, genuinely curious. Vanessa took a careful sip before answering. "That I've been valuing the wrong things. That I've been teaching Lily to value the wrong things. That maybe there's more substance in your approach to life than I've been willing to recognize." The admission clearly cost her something in pride, and I respected the courage it took. "It's never too late to recalibrate," I offered, for any of us. David's been saying something similar, she said with a small smile. He's been talking about downsizing, about focusing more on experiences than appearances. I thought he was having some kind of midlife crisis. I laughed softly. Or perhaps a midlife awakening. Maybe, she conceded. Either way, things are shifting. And I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for the way I've treated you, for the way I've influenced Lily. Thank you, I said simply. That means a great deal to me. We sat in surprisingly comfortable silence for a moment, the afternoon sunlight filtering through my kitchen windows, casting golden squares across the worn tile floor. There's something else, Vanessa said, setting down her cup. I'd like your help with a project. What kind of project? I want to host a real family dinner, not a performance for colleagues or clients, but something meaningful. With food that matters, that tells our family story. She hesitated. I thought perhaps you could teach me some of your techniques. Help me understand what cooking means to you. Of all the requests I might have anticipated from Vanessa, this was perhaps the last. I studied her face, finding genuine interest beneath the lingering uncertainty. I'd be happy to, I said warmly. When were you thinking? This weekend? Saturday afternoon if you're free. Just you and me in the kitchen, before everyone else arrives for dinner. I agreed, and as Vanessa prepared to leave, she paused at the door. Lily's been different since Sunday, she said thoughtfully. More centered somehow, more herself. She told me she wants to keep working at Harvest Table, that she's applying for more kitchen shifts rather than serving. She has natural talent, I said, and passion when she allows herself to show it. She gets that from you, Vanessa acknowledged, the simple recognition of our connection more meaningful than any elaborate apology could have been. After she left, I called Jack to share the unexpected visit. His delight in this development matched my own, his understanding of its significance requiring no explanation. Will wonders never cease? He remarked warmly. The universe works in mysterious ways, Elena. Indeed it does, I agreed, thinking of how a hurtful exclusion had somehow opened doors to greater inclusion than I'd experienced in years. Thursday. Morning found me at Cedar Bean, a small cafe near the farmer's market, joining Sandra and Jack for our meeting with Marcus. The chef arrived precisely on time, his casual attire belying his exacting professional standards. Elena, he greeted me with a warm handshake. I was hoping you'd be here. Your involvement is essential for what I'm proposing. Over coffee and pastries, Marcus outlined his vision for a partnership between Harvest Table and the community center, a structured program that would create pathways for culinary training, mentorship, and eventual employment. We're always struggling to find skilled kitchen staff, he explained, particularly people who understand the fundamentals of flavor development and technique. Like relationships, Jack offered quietly from where he was preparing a chili oil. The most meaningful ones require attention and adaptation, not rigid formulas. Vanessa glanced at him, then at me, something shifting in her expression. I've always preferred situations I can control, outcomes I can predict. Cooking the way you do, by feel, by intuition, it's completely foreign to me. It gets easier with practice, I assured her. The more you cook from the heart, rather than just from recipes, the more you develop trust in your own senses. The kitchen filled with the layered aromas of toasting chilies, simmering beans, and caramelizing sugar, I noticed a gradual relaxation in Vanessa's posture, a softening of the rigid control she typically maintained. When her tortilla puffed perfectly on the comal, her face lit with a childlike delight I'd never witnessed before. I did it, she exclaimed, looking to me for confirmation. Beautifully, I affirmed. You have good hands for this work. The simple compliment seemed to touch her deeply. No one has ever said that about me before, she said quietly. Good hands, as if they're made for creating something substantial. The moment felt significant, a small but meaningful recognition of value beyond the superficial metrics she'd always prioritized. By mid-afternoon, our preparations were well underway. David and Max returned from the yard, the boy's cheeks flushed with exertion, his father looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. "Something smells incredible," David observed, peering into various pots and pans. "Mom made most of it," Lily informed him proudly. "The beans are her tortillas, too." Vanessa looked simultaneously embarrassed and pleased by the recognition. "With considerable help," she qualified. "I'm just beginning to understand how much skill is involved in what your mother makes look effortless." David glanced at me, something like admiration in his expression. "I think we've all been guilty of that, underestimating the mastery involved in what Mom does." "Speaking of mastery," Jack interjected smoothly, "the wines should be open to breathe before dinner. David, perhaps you could help me select which to start with?" The two men moved to the dining room with the bottles Jack had brought, their voices soon mingling in amicable discussion of vintages and pairings. Lily and Max began setting the table, leaving Vanessa and me alone in the kitchen to finish the final preparations. "Thank you," she said suddenly, focusing intently on the cilantro she was chopping, "not just for today, but for being willing to start fresh with me. I know I haven't made it easy over the years." "Family rarely is easy," I replied, adjusting the flame under the beans. "But it's always worth the effort." She set down her knife, turning to face me directly. "I want you to know I've been in touch with Sandra at the community center. I'm serious about contributing to the Culinary Institute, not just as a gesture, but because I believe in what you're creating. My background in business development could actually be useful." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. This wasn't the Vanessa who calculated every action for social advantage. This was someone genuinely seeking meaningful contribution. "The program would benefit tremendously from your expertise," I acknowledged. "Culinary skill alone isn't enough. For our students to succeed, they need business understanding too." She nodded, relief evident in her expression. "I've scheduled a meeting with Sandra next week to discuss specifics. I wanted you to hear it from me first." "I appreciate that," I said simply. We worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, the rhythmic sounds of chopping and stirring creating a peaceful backdrop. "Jack seems wonderful," Vanessa said eventually, her tone carefully casual. "How long have you two been friends?" I supplied with a small smile. "We've taught together at the community center for about a year. The rest is evolving." "He looks at you like Roberto used to," she observed softly. "I remember noticing it at family gatherings, how your husband would watch you across a room, his expression changing whenever you came into view." The comparison startled me. I had been so focused on navigating this new connection with Jack that I hadn't fully registered the parallels to my relationship with Roberto. But Vanessa was right. There was something in Jack's gaze that echoed the steady, appreciative attention my husband had always given me. "Life has unexpected chapters," I said finally, "even when you think the story might be winding down." "I'm glad," Vanessa said with surprising warmth. "You deserve that kind of attention, that kind of partnership." Before I could respond, Lily burst back into the kitchen. "Dinner table's ready. Max is folding napkins into those swan things Abuela taught him." The moment dissolved, but something had shifted permanently between Vanessa and me. A new foundation, laid for whatever relationship might develop going forward. By 6 o'clock, our feast was ready. We carried dishes to the formal dining room, where the table had been beautifully set with candles and fresh flowers. Jack and David had selected a rosé to begin the meal, its bottles nestled in ice buckets, alongside water carafes. "Should we wait for the other guests?" I asked, noticing the table was set for 6 rather than the larger gathering I'd anticipated. "There are no other guests," David explained. "Just us." Family and Jack, of course, he added with a nod toward Jack. We wanted this to be about reconnection, not performance. The simple statement, so contrary to their usual approach to entertaining, moved me deeply. This wasn't the precisely choreographed social event they typically hosted, but something more authentic and intentional. As we settled around the table, I found myself at the head position, a placement that felt both honoring and slightly uncomfortable. Jack sat to my right, David to my left, with Vanessa, Lily, and Max completing the circle. Before we begin, David said, raising his glass, I'd like to make a toast. To my mother, Elena Rodriguez, not just an extraordinary cook, but a woman of substance whose values and vision we're only beginning to fully appreciate. And to new beginnings for our family. To Elena, Jack echoed, his eyes meeting mine with warmth that made my cheeks flush. To Abuela, Lily and Max chimed in. To new beginnings, Vanessa completed, her expression genuinely serene. As glasses clinked and the first dishes were passed, I felt a swelling of emotion I hadn't anticipated. This was what I had always hoped for. Not grandeur or formal recognition, but genuine appreciation and connection with the people I loved most. The meal unfolded with a natural rhythm, dishes passing from hand to hand, exclamations of pleasure at particular flavors, stories emerging organically. David recalled childhood meals at our small apartment, memories he hadn't referenced in years. Lily described her experiences in Harvest Table's kitchen, her growing confidence with professional techniques. Max regaled us with a detailed account of a school science project involving food chemistry. Through it all, Jack's steady presence beside me provided quiet support. His occasional glances, the brush of his hand against mine, his thoughtful questions that kept conversation flowing when awkward moments threatened. He belonged here, I realized with mild surprise. Not as an outsider or observer, but as an integral part of whatever new family constellation was forming. As we finished the main courses and prepared to serve the flan, David cleared his throat, glancing at Vanessa for confirmation before speaking. Mom, we've been doing a lot of thinking since everything happened, he began, his tone more serious than before. About our priorities, about how we've been living, about the example we've been setting for the kids. Oh? I kept my tone neutral, though my pulse quickened slightly. We've decided to make some significant changes, Vanessa continued. Starting with this house, we're putting it on the market next month. I nearly dropped the serving spoon I was holding. You're selling the house? But you love this house. We thought we did, David acknowledged. Or rather, we loved what it represented. Status, achievement, having arrived in a certain social circle. But the truth is, it's never really felt like home. It's been a showcase, a statement piece. Where will you go? I asked, genuinely curious. We're looking at properties in Cedar Ridge, Vanessa said, naming a modest but charming neighborhood about halfway between Westbridge and Oakdale. Something smaller, more manageable, with a real yard for Max and a kitchen I'll actually use. And within 15 minutes of both you and the community center, David added meaningfully. The intentionality behind their choice struck me deeply. This wasn't just a practical decision, but a value statement, a realignment of priorities that placed relationship and purpose above appearance. That sounds wonderful, I said sincerely, but it's a big change. Are you sure? More sure than we've been about anything in a long time, David replied. The dinner party situation, it forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about how we've been living, the constant striving for more, better, bigger. It's exhausting, and ultimately empty. We want something different for Lily and Max, Vanessa added. We want them to value substance over show, relationships over status. The things we finally recognized are central to your life, Elena. Jack's hand found mine under the table, a gentle squeeze offering support during this emotional revelation. There's more, David continued. I've been offered a partnership position at the firm, the one I've been working toward for years. That's wonderful news, I exclaimed. I turned it down, he said quietly. My surprise must have shown plainly on my face. It would have meant 60-hour weeks minimum, constant travel, essentially sacrificing family time for career advancement, he explained. Instead, I've arranged to stay at my current level with a 4-day work week. Slightly less money, substantially more life. And I'm scaling back my social media consulting to focus on real business development, Vanessa added, starting with the Culinary Institute project, which has already become more fulfilling than running Instagram accounts for luxury brands. I looked between them, these two people I had often judged as superficial and status-obsessed, now articulating values and choices that reflected deep reconsideration of their life direction. I'm proud of you both, I said finally, the words feeling insufficient for the emotion behind them. These aren't easy changes to make. We had a good example, David said meaningfully. Someone who's always chosen substance over appearance, contribution over recognition. Speaking of contribution, Lily interjected, should we tell Abuela about the scholarship idea? David and Vanessa exchanged glances before nodding. We want to establish a scholarship fund for the Culinary Institute, Vanessa explained, specifically for single parents or older adults seeking second careers, people who might not otherwise have access to culinary training. The Elena Rodriguez Culinary Heritage Scholarship, David specified, to honor your approach to cooking as cultural preservation and community building. I pressed my fingertips to my lips, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in my throat. They had not only heard me but understood the deeper purpose behind my cooking, behind my teaching, the preservation of heritage, the building of community through shared food traditions. That would be, I struggled to find words, adequate to my feelings. Perfect, Jack supplied quietly. It captures exactly what Elena has always valued in culinary education. Max, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this serious conversation, suddenly piped up. Does this mean Abuela will come over more often and teach us more cooking stuff? If she's willing, David replied, looking to me with a question in his eyes. Nothing would make me happier, I assured them. Though my schedule may be getting busier with the Culinary Institute development. We'll make it work, Vanessa said firmly. Family comes first. As we finished our meal with the silky caramelized flan Vanessa had prepared under my guidance, I marveled at the journey that had brought us to this moment. From exclusion to inclusion, from performance to authenticity, from judgment to understanding, in just 2 short weeks, the foundations of our family dynamics had undergone seismic shifts. 18 dishes requested without a seat at the table had somehow transformed into 6 dishes prepared together, with me at the head of that same table. Not through confrontation or demand, but through the quiet power of standing firmly in my own truth, allowing my full self to be seen. As Jack and I drove home later that evening, the comfortable silence between us felt like a warm embrace after the emotional intensity of the day. You have a remarkable family, he observed finally. Their capacity for growth is impressive. They surprised me, I admitted. I had underestimated their potential for change, just as they had underestimated me. That's often how it works in families, Jack said thoughtfully. We get locked into seeing each other through outdated lenses, missing the evolution happening right before our eyes. I watched the familiar streets pass by my window, the route from David's house to mine now bridging worlds that had seemed irreconcilably separate just weeks before. Thank you for being there today, I said softly. Your presence made a difference. I'm glad, he replied simply. Though I think the real change was already underway, catalyzed by your decision to stop hiding your light. As we pulled into my driveway, neither of us seemed eager to end the evening. Would you like to come? In for coffee? I offered. Or perhaps something stronger after such an eventful day. Jack's smile in the dim car interior warmed me to my core. I'd like that very much, he said. Very much indeed. 3 months passed with the swiftness that comes from purposeful activity and meaningful connection. The autumn leaves gave way to winter frost, and my life settled into a new rhythm, fuller, richer, and more authentic than I had allowed myself to experience in years. The Harvest Community Culinary Institute moved from concept to reality with remarkable speed. The city's matching funds combined with Marcus's contribution, my own financial commitment, and several local business donations created a substantial foundation. A dedicated space within the community center was renovated, industrial equipment installed, and curriculum finalized. We would launch with 2 cohorts of 8 students each in January, with a waiting list already forming for the spring session. My role as lead instructor for traditional techniques suited me perfectly. Teaching had always brought me joy, but developing a comprehensive program that honored cultural cooking traditions, while preparing students for professional opportunities, felt like the culmination of my life's work. Jack headed the professional skills component, bringing his years of restaurant experience to lessons on kitchen management, timing, and execution under pressure. Vanessa surprised everyone, perhaps herself most of all, with her dedication to the business development portion of our program. Her marketing expertise and industry connections proved invaluable, and she approached her role with an enthusiasm I'd previously seen her direct only toward social climbing endeavors. She developed modules on restaurant economics, brand development, and entrepreneurial strategies that transformed how our students envisioned their potential culinary careers. David contributed as well, restructuring his work schedule to teach a monthly session on financial management for small food businesses. His insights on sustainable growth and intelligent investment reflected a professional acumen I had not fully appreciated before. And Lily, my once image-conscious granddaughter who had been embarrassed by her connection to me, flourished in her apprenticeship at Harvest Table. Her inherent talent, nurtured by professional training and reconnection to her cultural heritage, earned her increasing responsibility in the kitchen. Chef Marcus's mentorship pushed her to develop technical precision while encouraging the intuitive understanding of flavor that came naturally to her. "She reminds me of you," he told me during one of our weekly menu development sessions. That rare combination of technical skill and intuitive creativity, she's going to surpass both of us someday. The prediction filled me with quiet pride. What greater legacy could I hope for than to see my granddaughter carrying forward culinary traditions while making them distinctively her own? Even Max found his place in our evolving family landscape, appointed official taste tester for new recipes developed at the Institute. His earnest evaluations and surprisingly sophisticated palate made him a favorite with instructors and students alike. Beyond the Institute, other aspects of my life transformed as well. My relationship with Jack deepened into a partnership that felt both familiar and exhilaratingly new. We maintained our separate homes but shared most evenings, cooking together, planning Institute curriculum, or simply enjoying companionable silence with books and music. At 60 and 58 respectively, we brought to our relationship the wisdom of experience and the appreciation for connection that comes from having known its absence. "I never expected this chapter of my life," Jack confessed one evening, as we sat on my porch, watching the first snow of winter dust my herb garden. "After Caroline died, I assumed that part of my story was complete." I nodded, understanding perfectly. After Roberto's death, I too had reorganized my life around the assumption that romantic partnership belonged to my past. "Life has a way of surprising us," I replied, my hand finding his, "especially when we stop limiting its possibilities." The most remarkable transformation, however, occurred in my relationship with David and Vanessa. True to their word, they sold the Westbridge Estates house, purchasing a charming craftsman home in Cedar Ridge with a large kitchen and backyard garden space. The move represented more than geographic relocation. It signified a fundamental shift in values and priorities that continued to unfold in daily choices and interactions. Our Sunday family dinners became a cherished tradition, rotating between their new home and mine. Cooking together replaced the performative entertaining that had characterized their previous lifestyle. Sometimes Jack joined us, sometimes his adult daughter and her children came as well, our family circle expanding to include new connections. It was during one such Sunday gathering in early December that David broached a subject that took me by surprise. "Mom, we've been thinking," he began, glancing at Vanessa for reassurance. "About Christmas this year." I nodded encouragingly, stirring the pozole simmering on my stove. In previous years, their Christmas celebrations had been elaborate affairs, centered around impressing colleagues and social connections, with family obligations treated as secondary considerations. "We want to do something completely different," Vanessa continued. "Something meaningful rather than showy." "That sounds wonderful," I replied. "What did you have in mind?" David took a deep breath. "We'd like to serve Christmas dinner at the community center, for families who otherwise might not have a holiday meal. We've already spoken with Sandra about using the Institute kitchen, and she's enthusiastic about the idea." The ladle nearly slipped from my hand. "You want to cook for the community center families? All of you?" "All of us," Vanessa confirmed. "You, me, David, Lily, Max, Jack, if he's willing. We thought we could prepare traditional dishes, your recipes, and serve them family style. Create a genuine celebration for people who could use some extra joy." I studied their faces, finding nothing but sincerity. No social media opportunity, no networking angle, no performance aspect, just a genuine desire to contribute meaningfully. "That sounds perfect," I said finally, emotion making my voice husky. "Absolutely perfect." Lily, who had been chopping vegetables nearby, added, "Chef Marcus wants to contribute too. He's offering to provide desserts from Harvest Table and help with logistics. And several students from the First Institute cohort have volunteered to assist," David noted. "It's becoming quite the community effort." The vision they described, of a Christmas centered around service and genuine connection rather than consumption and impression management, touched me deeply. This was transformation made tangible, values realignment expressed through concrete action. "How many people are we expecting?" I asked, already mentally cataloging recipes that could be prepared efficiently for a large group. "Sandra estimates about 75, Vanessa replied, "including some of the families from the emergency shelter program." "We'll need to start preparations well in advance," I mused. "Make lists, assign responsibilities." "Already underway," David assured me, producing a detailed spreadsheet from his pocket. "We've outlined a preliminary plan, but we need your expertise to refine it." As we gathered around my kitchen table, David, Vanessa, Lily, and Max, collaborating on this project of genuine significance, I marveled at the journey we had traveled together. From a painful exclusion had emerged inclusion of a deeper, more authentic kind. From superficial connection had developed relationship grounded in mutual respect and shared purpose. The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of planning and preparation. My kitchen became command central for the Christmas dinner operation, with family members coming and going at all hours to test recipes, prepare items that could be made ahead, and refine our logistics plan. Jack integrated himself seamlessly into these efforts, his professional expertise proving invaluable for scaling recipes and organizing workflow. His presence in our family activities felt increasingly natural, his relationship with David evolving into a friendship based on mutual respect rather than awkward accommodation. Even Sophia, my often critical sister who had long ago written off David and Vanessa as hopelessly materialistic, found herself impressed by their transformation when she visited to help with holiday preparations. "I hardly recognize them," she confessed one evening after they had left. "Particularly Vanessa. There's a genuineness to her I've never seen before. People can surprise us when given the chance, I replied, thinking of how often I had limited my own family with fixed perceptions, just as they had limited me. Christmas Eve dawned clear and cold, the community center kitchen humming with activity by 7 in the morning. David and Vanessa arrived first, followed shortly by Lily and Max, each immediately assuming their assigned responsibilities with focus and enthusiasm. Jack and I supervised the overall operation, stepping in where needed but largely allowing others to exercise their developing skills. Marcus appeared mid-morning with his pastry chef and an array of spectacular desserts, his usual professional intensity softened by the holiday spirit. By noon, delicious aromas filled the Institute kitchen: slow-roasted meats, simmering beans, fresh tortillas cooking on the comal, traditional rice with its distinctive coloring from tomatoes and spices. Student volunteers arranged the dining hall with careful attention to creating a welcoming atmosphere. Fresh greenery on each table, handcrafted decorations from the center's children's program, soft lights strung overhead. Watching it all unfold, I felt a profound sense of rightness, as if all the separate threads of my life were finally weaving together into a coherent whole. My culinary knowledge, my family relationships, my community involvement, my financial resources, all aligned in service of something meaningful and lasting. The community center families began arriving at 2 o'clock, many dressed in their holiday best, children wide-eyed with excitement. Sandra had arranged for transportation from the emergency shelter, ensuring everyone who wished to participate could attend regardless of circumstances. We served the meal family style, with our own family members dispersed throughout the dining hall to facilitate serving and conversation. David carved meat at one table, his natural warmth emerging in interactions with shelter residents. Vanessa helped children with their plates, her usual reserve melting in the face of their unfiltered enthusiasm. Lily moved confidently between tables, explaining dishes and sharing stories about their cultural significance. Max appointed himself official, ambassador to the younger children, organizing impromptu games while adults conversed. Jack found me in a quiet moment, slipping his arm around my waist as we surveyed the scene from the kitchen doorway. "Look what you've created," he murmured. "Not me," I corrected gently. "All of us together. Family in the broadest sense. Which would never have happened without your courage 3 months ago," he countered. Standing in your truth opened the door for everything that followed. Perhaps he was right. My decision to attend the Harvest Table event rather than accept exclusion from my son's dinner party had indeed catalyzed extraordinary change. But it had required everyone's willingness to grow, to reconsider, to choose authenticity over appearance. As the meal progressed, I circulated among the tables, receiving compliments on the food, but more meaningfully, witnessing connections forming across differences of circumstance and background. A financial advisor from the shelter program discovered common ground with David. An elderly resident shared traditional recipes with Lily, who recorded them reverently in her notebook. Vanessa engaged deeply with a single mother struggling to establish a small catering business, offering practical marketing advice and genuine encouragement. Near the end of the meal, Sandra called for everyone's attention, rising to address the gathering. "Before we serve dessert, I want to express our profound gratitude to the Rodriguez family and the Harvest Community Culinary Institute team for this extraordinary celebration. What you're experiencing today is more than just a meal. It's the beginning of a new tradition for our center, one that exemplifies the Institute's mission of building community through culinary heritage." Warm applause filled the room, Lily reaching for my hand as Sandra continued. "I'm also thrilled to announce that applications are now open for the Elena Rodriguez Culinary Heritage Scholarship, which will provide full tuition and support services for 4 students from our community programs to attend the Institute's spring session." The announcement caught me by surprise. David and Vanessa had mentioned establishing the scholarship, but I hadn't realized it had progressed to implementation so quickly. This scholarship, Sandra explained to the gathered families. Honors. A woman who understands that cooking is never just about food. It's about heritage, connection, and creating space where people can be nourished in body and spirit. I felt tears threatening and blinked them back, overwhelmed by the moment. From my grandson's simple request that I cook 18 dishes for a dinner party where I wouldn't have a seat at the table to this, a named scholarship that would create opportunity for others, a family transformed by authentic connection, a community gathering that embodied the values I had quietly lived by all my life. After dessert was served and the formal program concluded, families lingered, reluctant to end the warm communion of the afternoon. Children played games organized by community center staff, while adults conversed in small clusters throughout the hall. The rigid social hierarchies that often defined such gatherings had dissolved, replaced by genuine human connection across differences of circumstance and background. David found me as I was packaging leftover food for families to take home. "Mom," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." His serious tone gave me pause. "What is it?" "This is the first Christmas since Dad died that feels right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "All those years of elaborate parties and expensive gifts, they were empty compared to this. Thank you for showing us another way." I embraced my son, this grown man who had traveled his own complex journey toward authenticity. "You found your way," I corrected gently. "I just had faith you would." As twilight gathered outside the community center windows, our extended family, biological and chosen, gathered for a moment of quiet reflection before departing. Jack stood beside me, his steady presence a gift I treasured. David and Vanessa, their expressions peaceful in a way I'd rarely witnessed before. Lily, growing into her heritage and talents with newfound confidence. Max, his natural warmth and enthusiasm undiminished by social pretense. "I know we still have to clean up," David said, "but I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge what happened here today. Not just a meal or a holiday event, but something transformative for all of us." "From 18 dishes without a seat at the table," Vanessa added, meeting my eyes with genuine understanding, "to this abundant gathering where everyone belongs. The journey hasn't always been comfortable, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." "To family," Jack proposed, raising his water glass in a simple toast. "In all its complex, evolving, authentic forms." "To family," we echoed together, the word holding depths of meaning that transcended biology to encompass shared purpose, mutual respect, and genuine connection. As we dispersed to begin the cleanup process, I paused to take in the scene once more. My family working alongside community members, laughter and conversation flowing naturally, the artificial barriers of status and appearance dissolved in the wake of meaningful shared experience. 3 months ago, I had stood alone in my kitchen, staring at a text message that excluded me from my son's carefully curated dinner party. The pain of that moment had been real, but so was the opportunity it created to step fully into my truth, to allow my complete self to be seen, to catalyze authentic connection in place of superficial accommodation. Sometimes the most painful exclusions lead to the most meaningful inclusions, I reflected, picking up a serving platter to carry to the kitchen. And sometimes being asked to cook 18 dishes without a seat at the table is the beginning, not the end of a story about finding your rightful place in the family constellation. Outside the community center windows, the first gentle snowflakes of Christmas Eve began to fall, transforming the ordinary landscape into something magical and new, much as truth, courage, and authenticity had transformed our family's ordinary interactions into something profound and sustaining. I smiled as Jack caught my eye across the room, his expression conveying all that needed to be said between us. Then I turned toward the kitchen where my family awaited, ready to complete the day's work together, nourished not just by the food we had prepared, but by the genuine connection we had finally, beautifully established. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.